Close your eyes. For a moment, stop chasing the noise. Let the world fall silent. Not because silence is the absence of sound, but because in that silence, something stirs. Something ancient. Something true. You are here, not as the person your name carries, not as the role you play, but as a breath, rising and falling. You were born from this breath, and to it you will one day return, and yet you are afraid. Afraid of what it means to end. Afraid of vanishing into that breath for the last time. You fear death, not because you know it, but because you don't. But the Buddha knew. He sat beneath the Bodhi tree, not to become more than human, but to remember what it meant to be fully human. And in doing so, he understood death, not as an enemy, not as a punishment, but as a door, a return. And so we begin here, with the truth that you were never meant to cling to this life like a drowning man, to driftwood. You were meant to float, to rise and fall with the current of existence, as leaves dance on the wind. To know, in the marrow of your being, that death is not the opposite of life, it is the opposite of birth. Life has no opposite. It is the current that flows through all forms, all names. It wears the shape of your body, your voice, your joys, your grief, and then it moves on, like a flame to a new candle. To fear death is to fear change, and to fear change is to deny the most fundamental truth of the universe. Everything changes. Everything. This is not a curse, this is liberation. Because in impermanence there is no prison, only a path. And on this path, the Buddha did not offer us promises of heaven or threats of hell. He offered us clarity. He offered us the tools to see, and through seeing, to be free. So what is there to see? Begin with this: your thoughts are not facts. Your beliefs are not reality. Your mind is not you. The Buddha taught that the mind is like a mirror, capable of reflecting the world with perfect clarity, but often clouded with dust. Dust of desire, dust of fear, dust of identity. You look into the mirror and say, "This is me." But what you see is a thought dressed in flesh, a story you've told yourself so many times that you've mistaken it for truth. But truth does not shout, it whispers. And in that whisper you will hear something terrifying and beautiful. There is no fixed self, no I that stands outside the river of change. This is the insight that cracks the shell of ego, the insight that unchains you from the lie that you must defend, build, and perfect a self that was never solid to begin with. When you understand this, fear begins to unravel. Because what is there to fear if there is no permanent self to lose? This body, it will fall away. These memories, they will fade. But awareness, luminous, empty, unborn, remains. Not as your possession, not as a soul trapped in a cage of bone, but as the clear sky behind all clouds. You don't own the sky, you are the sky. But the mind clings. It clings to pleasure. It clings to pain. It clings to stories of me, mine, I. And this clinging is the root of suffering. The Buddha did not say suffering is punishment. He said suffering is attachment. Like a hand grasping fire, we clutch at things we cannot keep, and we wonder why we burn. Let go, not because letting go is easy, but because it is the only thing that frees you. To let go is not to give up, it is to give in to the truth that nothing can be held. Not youth, not love, not even breath. Everything is borrowed, and when it is time, everything must be returned. This is not a tragedy. This is the nature of things. And when you begin to see the nature of things, not through intellect, but through the deep knowing that comes in stillness, a new vision arises. You see that life is not measured by the number of breaths you take, but by the number of moments you are truly present. And you see that fear, especially the fear of death, is a shadow cast by a mind not yet at home in the present. but you can come home. You come home every time you sit, close your eyes, and simply observe the breath, the body, the rising and falling of sensations. In this simple attention, you begin to peel back the illusions. You see that anger is not your anger. It is a flame. It rises. It burns. It passes. You see that sorrow is not your sorrow. It is a cloud. It gathers. It weeps. It dissolves. And joy, even joy, is not your joy. It is a breeze. It arrives. It refreshes. It moves on. Everything is moving. Everything is alive. And everything ends. But when you see this, really see this, something incredible happens. You stop needing things to last. You stop demanding permanence from the impermanent. And suddenly, peace, not the peace of avoidance, or denial, or distraction, but the peace of presence. And in that peace, death loses its grip on you. Because how can death harm what is not clinging to life? The Buddha taught that awakening is not about adding something to yourself. It is about removing what is false, the masks, the fears, the illusions of control. And as you shed these layers, you do not become less. You become light. You become free. You begin to act, not out of fear or greed or ego, but from clarity, from compassion, from wisdom. And this is the greatest preparation for death, to live in such a way that you are not afraid to die, because you have already died. You have died to illusion, to ignorance, to false identity, and in that death, you have found life, life unbound, life awake, life not afraid. So if you ask, how do I stop fearing death? The answer is not to believe harder. It is to see clearer, to turn the mind inward, not with violence, but with kindness, to sit again and again, in silence, not to escape life, but to meet it, fully. This is the path, not a path of escape, but of embrace, a path of fire and stillness, of truth and tenderness. The Buddha never promised comfort. He promised clarity, and in that clarity you will see that nothing dies, only forms change. Only names dissolve, but life remains. When you stop fearing death, something else happens, something unexpected. You stop fearing life, no longer haunted by the ticking clock. You begin to see every moment as a miracle that doesn't need to last to be real. A breeze through the trees, the warmth of tea in your hands, the laughter of someone you love, echoing through a hallway you may never walk again. You stop counting how long things will stay. You just let them be fully, deeply, without grasping. And from this, a new kind of vision is born. This vision isn't the kind that sees the future. It's the kind that sees through the illusions of the present. The kind that cuts through the surface of appearances and peers into the heart of things, revealing what is fleeting and what is true. The Buddha called this prajna, wisdom beyond logic, not the accumulation of facts, not the sharpening of argument, but the inner seeing that arises when the mind is calm and clear, like a still lake reflecting the moon. With this vision, you begin to see suffering where others see success. You begin to see delusion wrapped in beauty, addiction hiding behind pleasure, control disguised as love. You begin to see yourself, not the mask, not the posture, not the polished story you carry into the world, but the one behind the eyes, the witness, the ever-present awareness that has been with you in every breath, every joy, every sorrow. And this seeing changes everything, because once you see the nature of fire, you stop grasping the flame, and once you see the nature of thought, you stop believing every word your mind speaks. You begin to understand that the greatest illusions are not outside you, they are the voices in your head that whisper, you are not enough, you must be more, you must have more, you must control everything, or you will be nothing. But what if being nothing is the beginning of freedom? What if in the absence of ego, of pride, of grasping, there is something more sacred waiting? From the silence that follows this death of illusion, discipline arises, not as punishment, but as love. Discipline is not control. It is care. It is the choice to wake early, not to impress others, but to greet the day in stillness. It is the choice to speak kindly, not because others demand it, but because anger burns the hand that holds it. It is the choice to sit again and again with the breath, the body, the sensations, not because you are seeking achievement, but because you are remembering who you are beneath the noise. This is the way of sati, mindfulness, not a trick, not a trend, but the sacred art of coming home to yourself in every moment, to eat and know you are eating, to walk and know you are walking, to breathe and know you are alive, not as a concept, but as a lived truth. In this awareness, even the smallest actions become holy. The way you fold your clothes, the way you wash a dish, the way you look someone in the eye and truly see them without judgment, without agenda, just presence. This is action rooted in being, not in striving, not in proving. And when your actions arise from this stillness, something beautiful unfolds. You stop seeking approval and start offering presence. You stop clinging to plans and start trusting the unfolding. You stop performing life and start participating in it. And in this sacred participation, your purpose begins to emerge. Not as a grand mission written in the sky, but as a quiet knowing that the purpose of life is not to become someone, but to realize you were never separate. That the purpose of your breath is not to carry you forward, but to anchor you here. That the purpose of your pain is not to punish, but to wake you up. Wake up, that is the call of the Buddha. Not sleep more sweetly in delusion, but wake up again and again and again. And when you are awake, gratitude comes not as a reaction, but as a way of being. You begin to give thanks for things others ignore. The sensation of water against your skin, the silence between two heartbeats, the space between thoughts. You give thanks, not because life is perfect, but because you are no longer demanding it to be. You give thanks because every moment is a teacher, and every breath is a gift. And in gratitude, even sorrow becomes sacred. Even endings become beginnings. Even death becomes a doorway, not a wall. You no longer measure life by its length, but by its depth. You no longer ask, how long do I have, but how fully can I live with what I have? And this fullness, this presence, is what allows you to adapt, to bend when life breaks you, to soften when the world hardens, to rise when everything in you wants to collapse. This is khanti, patience, forbearance, the strength to endure not by resisting, but by opening. And from this openness comes something even more precious: resilience. Resilience is not about bouncing back. It is about returning wiser, kinder, clearer to the truth that nothing can be taken from you that you are not clinging to, the truth that you are not here to possess but to participate, the truth that this moment, however painful, however fleeting, is enough, because you are enough, not someday, now. And with this knowing, you begin to live differently. You begin to meet people not as roles or means to an end, but as mirrors. You begin to listen, not to respond, but to understand. You begin to speak, not to convince, but to connect. You begin to walk through the world not as a stranger, but as a presence. And this presence is the greatest gift you can offer, because it says, without words, I see you, I hear you, I am with you. And perhaps that is all we ever truly needed. Not answers, not guarantees, not control, but presence. The presence that says, even in death, I am not alone. Because how can you be alone when you are not a separate self, but a wave on the ocean of being? You are not a drop in the sea. You are the sea in a drop. So breathe, live. And when death comes, as it surely will, greet it not with fear, but with reverence, because it too is a teacher, it too is a return. And when you understand this, not as a theory, but as a lived truth, death loses its sting, and life becomes luminous. There is a quiet revolution that begins the moment you stop trying to escape life and stop trying to escape death. When you no longer need to survive at all costs, you finally begin to live at full depth. And the strange luminous irony of this path is that in releasing your grip on permanence, you are gifted something more precious than certainty: peace. You begin to walk through the world without armor, not because there is no pain, but because there is no need to resist it. You no longer fear the rain, because you know it will pass. You no longer dread the night, because you know the dawn always returns. So you loosen your hands, you soften your heart, you breathe, not just with your lungs, but with your whole being. And in that breath, something ancient stirs again. It is the wisdom of non-resistance. It is the understanding that what you push against only grows stronger, that fear fed becomes terror, that grief resisted becomes despair. But when you allow, when you make space, when you let be, everything begins to change. This is not passivity, it is power. The power to remain grounded when the earth beneath you trembles. The power to respond rather than react. The power to hold pain in one hand and compassion in the other, and to let both teach you. You become like bamboo in the storm, bending, never breaking, because your strength is not rigid. It flows. And from this flowing strength comes something almost unimaginable to the ordinary mind. Not the joy of gain, not the joy of praise, but the joy of simply being, the joy of touching life, even in its sorrow, the joy of waking up, even in grief, the joy of realizing that you are not here to own anything, but to cherish everything, to see beauty in a cracked teacup, to find poetry in the wrinkles of your mother's face, to hear the silence beneath a child's laughter. This joy is fierce because it refuses to be dependent. It is not held hostage by conditions. It arises from freedom. And from this freedom, the mind becomes luminous, not with noise, but with stillness. You begin to learn not just from books, but from the breath, from the wind, from the open sky. You begin to see that wisdom is not something you collect. It is something you remember. And what you remember is this: you already know. You already know what matters. You already know what is real. You already know what it means to live. You have just forgotten, buried under layers of striving, of judgment, of noise. But as you return to yourself, again and again, you begin to peel back those layers. And what remains is not a better version of you. It is the you that was never broken, the you that was never lacking, the you that was simply waiting to be remembered. And when you remember, you begin to see others differently, not as threats, not as obstacles, but as fellow travelers on this mysterious road. You see their wounds and do not turn away. You see their fear and do not judge. You see their anger and ask gently, what are you protecting? You begin to meet pain with presence, and presence with patience, because you know now that nothing in this world is truly personal, that every cruel word, every cold silence, every angry act is born from suffering, and the only true response to suffering is compassion, not as a concept, as a way of being. Compassion is not soft, it is fierce. It is the willingness to stay when it would be easier to run. It is the courage to see the humanity in someone who has forgotten their own. It is the quiet strength of the Bodhisattva, the one who delays their own final liberation out of love for all beings. This is not mythical, it is deeply human, and it is within you. You may not see it, But every time you choose kindness over cruelty, you are walking the Bodhisattva path. Every time you pause before reacting, breathe before judging, listen before responding, you are building a world where awakening is possible. And perhaps that is what death really teaches us. Not to run from the end, but to live in such a way that nothing is left unsaid, unheld, unloved. To live so completely that when death comes, it finds nothing to take, only something to return. And so we come back to where we began. The breath, the rising and falling, the endless wave of life moving through form, dissolving into formlessness, and becoming form again. This is the dark, this is the path. And though your feet may tremble, and your heart may ache, you are not alone. You are never alone. Because within you, there is a stillness deeper than fear, a silence louder than thought, a light that cannot be extinguished. It is the same light that burned in the eyes of the Buddha under the Bodhi tree, the same light that has guided seekers through deserts, through jungles, through lifetimes. It is not a belief, it is a knowing. And in this knowing, the question no longer becomes, how do I escape death, but how do I honor life? How do I bow to the moment? How do I serve what is sacred? How do I love so fully that even letting go is an act of joy? And the answer is not written in stone. It is written in breath, in the way you touch a leaf, in the way you speak a word, in the way you return, again and again, to what is true. And when you live like this, fear becomes a stranger, and death becomes a friend. Because now you see, truly see, that what dies was never you, and what remains was never born. You begin to walk lighter, not because the weight of the world has disappeared, but because you no longer carry it as yours alone. You let the river carry what it must. You let the leaves fall when they are ready. You stop trying to hold back the tide with your hands. And this is liberation. It is not the liberation of someone who has conquered life, but the liberation of someone who has stopped trying to conquer at all. Of someone who has surrendered, not in defeat, but in awakening. The Buddha did not transcend suffering by running from it. He walked directly into it, sat with it, listened to it, breathed with it. And in that fearless stillness, he saw the truth of it, that suffering is not a punishment, not a flaw in the system. It is a call to wake up, a call to return to the present, a call to remember what is real, what is eternal, what was never born and never dies. And when you finally answer that call, you begin to live not as a seeker, but as one who remembers. You remember that nothing outside of you can complete you. No possession, no title, no person, because what you've been searching for, peace, meaning, wholeness, has always been inside. Beneath the fear, beneath the craving, beneath the endless striving to become someone. There is nothing to become. There is only something to realize. And in that realization, your life becomes a mirror of the teachings, not in the words you recite, but in the way you move, the way you meet others, the way you meet yourself. There is no need to impress when your very presence speaks truth. There is no need to convert when your stillness invites remembrance. There is no need to cling when your heart knows the freedom of letting go of control, letting go of blame, letting go of the idea that you are unfinished. You are not a project. You are not broken. You are a wave that has forgotten it is the sea. And now you remember. From this remembrance comes action, not compulsive, not desperate, but sacred. Sacred action is the fruit of clear seeing. It is not about ambition. It is about alignment. It is not about achievement. It is about integrity. To live in alignment with truth is to let truth shape your every step, your every word, your every silence. It is to choose peace, even when it costs you comfort. It is to choose compassion, even when it makes you vulnerable. It is to choose presence, even when distraction seduces you with ease. And in every one of those choices, you die a little. To ego, to illusion, to the version of yourself the world told you to be. But in every one of those choices, something more radiant is born. Not a better you, a freer you, a you that is not driven by fear of death, but guided by reverence for life. A you that does not chase perfection, but embodies wholeness. A you that walks this earth, not to take, but to give attention, to give kindness, to give your full, unarmored presence, because you understand now, nothing you accumulate will follow you beyond the grave. Not your wealth, not your followers, not your reputation, but the energy you leave behind, the way you made people feel, the peace you cultivated within, the stillness you brought into every storm that remains. It ripples, it echoes, it becomes part of the great stream of life that carries on long after your name is forgotten. So ask yourself, am I living in such a way that if death came tonight, I could greet it with a soft smile? Am I tending to my inner world with the same care I give to outer pursuits? Am I walking gently, loving deeply, being fully right here? Because in the end, it's not the number of breaths you take that matter. It's the number of times you wake up within them, the number of times you look around and say, yes, this, all of this, even the sorrow, even the uncertainty, even the end, it's all sacred. And in that sacredness you dissolve, not into nothingness, but into everything. You no longer see death as the end of a story, but as a comma in the great sentence of being. You no longer see yourself as a separate character, but as a brushstroke in the endless painting of existence. And suddenly the need to control softens, the need to be remembered fades, the need to be understood disappears. You don't need the world to grasp you. You only need to grasp the moment. And when you do, grasp it fully, gently, gratefully, you are free, even now, even here, even in the face of loss, illness and death. Because when you understand this one sacred thing the Buddha taught, that nothing lasts, and that this is not tragedy but the key to peace, then you are no longer bound by fear. You are bound only by love. And love, unlike fear, does not clench. It opens, it gives, it surrenders, it forgives, and it lives on, not in monuments or memories, but in presence. So die before you die. Let the false self fall away. Let the layers of control, pride, and illusion burn in the fire of awareness. And from the ashes, let something softer arise, something fearless, luminous, awake, because that is who you truly are. Not a body, not a name, not a role, but awareness, but peace, but love, in its purest, most formless form. And when that is your truth, you do not need to fear death, because death cannot touch it. There is a stillness that comes, not after the storm, but in the center of it. It does not come because the world is quiet. It comes because you are. And in that stillness, something happens, not loud, not grand, but holy. A realization, a whisper in the heart of silence. There is nothing to fear. Not now, not ever, because you see it now, not as metaphor, not as philosophy, but as reality, lived and breathed. There is no true separation, no real ending, no final loss. You were never the body, you were never even the story. You were the awareness in which the body rose and fell, the presence in which the story played out, joy and sorrow, rise and fall, birth and death, all within you, not as something you owned but as something you witnessed. And now the witnessing itself becomes the sanctuary. This is why the Buddha smiled. He smiled not because the world became perfect, but because he no longer needed it to be. He smiled because he saw the dance and finally stopped trying to make the music last. He smiled because he had let go of the illusion of permanence, and in doing so stepped into something greater than permanence: presence. You see, permanence is static, but presence is alive. Permanence is built on resistance, but presence is born of surrender. And when you are fully present, death does not steal from you. It reveals you. It reveals what you clung to. It reveals what you feared. It reveals what you loved, and what you never dared to love enough. And so death, rather than being an end, becomes a mirror, the final, unflinching mirror in which all falsehoods fall away. There is no ego in that mirror, no title, no possession, no drama, just. And if you have lived awake, if you have loved without clinging, served without ego, walked without illusion, then that final mirror does not frighten you. It frees you. And even if you have not, even if you have stumbled, forgotten, fallen asleep, that mirror is still merciful, because it shows you what remains once all else is stripped away. And what remains is always enough, always whole, always light, because you are not the storm, you are the sky, you are not the flame, you are the space in which it flickers, you are not the form, you are the formless essence that lives and dies and lives again, not bound by body, not bound by time. This is the teaching. This is the treasure hidden in the heart of impermanence, not despair, not nothingness, but peace, deep, abiding, unconditional peace. And once you taste it, even once, your entire relationship with life changes. You no longer hurry, you no longer hoard, you no longer prove. Instead, you bless. You bless each breath as if it were your last. You bless each moment, not because it is perfect, but because it is real. You bless the pain because it opened you. You bless the joy because it lifted you. You bless the end because it completes the circle, and then you let it go. This too is sacred, to let go, not with bitterness, but with gratitude, not with fear, but with reverence, because every end is also a return. Return to source, return to silence, return to the vast, spacious, ever-present awareness that has never left you, not for a single breath. Even now, even here, even in this moment, you are held, not by something outside of you, but by the truth within you. And what is that truth? It is this: you are not dying. You are returning. You are not ending. You are transforming. You are not vanishing. You are dissolving into something wider, wiser, freer, into love. And what greater freedom is there than to live knowing this, to rise each day, not afraid of the end, but grateful for the unfolding, to walk into uncertainty, not with dread, but with wonder, to love fully, not because you will never lose, but because you will, and to know deeply, fiercely, that it is all okay, that it has always been okay, that you are okay, even in your most broken moments, even in your last breath, especially in your last breath, because if you understand this, not with your mind, but with your soul, then you will live a different life, a freer life, a quieter life, a life that doesn't need to shout to feel real, a life that doesn't need applause to feel meaningful, a life that leaves no trace but love, and that is more than enough. So what do you do now? You return to your life, not as a soldier at war with time, not as a consumer devouring experience, but as a monk in a sacred temple, aware that each step is holy, each word is a prayer, Each moment is a doorway to awakening. You return, and you live. You live with a heart that bows to endings. You live with a mind that no longer rushes past the now. You live with a spirit unafraid to disappear, because it knows it cannot. And in the end, when death finally does come, you will not resist it. You will greet it as an old friend, as the final exhale after a lifetime of breath, as the opening of a new door in a house you've always lived in. And in that final moment, you will remember the simplest, most sacred truth the Buddha ever taught. All conditioned things are impermanent. When one sees this with wisdom, one turns away from suffering, and in that turning, you become free. Free from fear, free from illusion, free to be what you always were. Light, peace, love. Now, breathe, and begin again.